Tuesday, July 6th, the moon will be in Gemini all day, and this is going to be a good thing. We get a little bit of a pick-me-up, especially from the previous days of being a little bit of a Debbie Downer. Now, we have to understand that the moon in Gemini is very curious. We have a lot of questions. We're seeking a lot of answers. We are looking for information, for details that's going to help our emotional standpoint. We want to also understand that we are building an intensity to the new moon, which again means that we are losing light in the sky. We are definitely sitting in those darker, more negative thoughts and emotions that we're going to have to struggle very, very hard with in order to stay positive, in order to stay high vibe. But the moon in Gemini at least lightens the mood a little bit. We are moving out of that earthy energy into airy energy that rules over our intellect. It makes, socializing a little bit more easier, communicating our emotions a little bit easier. And Gemini is pretty much at full steam at this particular point in time because Mercury, who rules over Gemini, is at full steam as well. So the moon goes ahead and squares Jupiter right out of the gate. So the square is a tension point. It's a crisis point. But the moon in Gemini, because so curious, because has so many questions and not enough answers, really runs into a roadblock when speaking with Jupiter, because of course Jupiter is retrograde and really wants us to grow past this current emotional and mental standpoint. It wants us to expand our thinking, our belief system in ourselves, first and foremost, and really attach to a new truth that is going to emerge by putting more of the pieces together. That Gemini energy definitely helps us to do that because the curiosity, the inquisitive mind, we are asking the right questions, we are collaborating with the right people, we are just putting ourselves out there because our mental plane is very active and we have to stimulate it and we have to entertain it. Mercury goes ahead, of course. Mercury is Gemini's ruler. Mercury is up to full speed at this point, still in his place of power in Gemini and running out of time because he will be shifting into Cancer very, very soon. Okay, this is what we're building up to. Not happening in this week's energy forecast, but it definitely will be happening in next week's energy forecast. Mercury squaring Neptune. So we talked about how Neptune is both, about dreams and imagination and our spiritual selves and our intuition, but also the shadow part of that is lies and delusion and deception. And of course, Neptune being retrograde smacks the rose-colored glasses off of our face and is really revealing a lot of the darkness that needs to be illuminated to the light. Mercury, of course, has a lot of questions, wants to dig, wants to, if I was to kind of give Mercury a personality, it would be the toddler that asks why. You ever have that kid that just doesn't accept your answer and just asks, why does it do this? Oh, you give them an answer. Well, why? Well, why? Well, why? It's that curiosity that Mercury brings to each and every single one of us. And right now, we have a lot of questions about why this is even happening. How could this happen? Again, I want to remind you to take a look at the great, grand, global stage right now. Okay, I'm in Canada. So what's going on for us right now is all of these unmarked graves from these Indigenous residential schools being found. Now, I don't even want to get into this rant because I got so much to say about it. However, it blows my mind that the collective was not even aware that these types of situations have been taking place, not only in our country, but towards the Indigenous people, not only in Canada, but all around the world. This is not a new thing. Now, why this is new information to some people, I have no clue. It is our social responsibility, our social obligation to shine a bright light on these absolutely horrific acts that have taken place in our history. And I hate to even say the word history because they're definitely not in just history. This is something that just ended, as far as the residential schools went, just ended in like the 70s. That's not that far away, right? That is not what I would consider history. To take it even further than that, the struggle with the indigenous people has not even been close to being over. They have been screaming for years and years and years about the injustice that have been put on them by our government. And for some reason, nobody has ever paid attention to them. It is a topic that gets me very fired up, that I try very hard to keep my own beliefs and my own perspective to myself, because I'm here to align everyone, regardless of their beliefs, regardless of their faith, regardless of their political views, because energy affects all of us. But at the same time, Neptune being retrograde is really unearthing a lot of these lies, a lot of the deception, a lot of the horrific acts, not only against the indigenous people, but children. If you have not realized yet that the world is attacking our children, our future generations, and our current generations of children, again, this is something that you need to wake up to. And Neptune going retrograde is definitely doing that. So Mercury squaring Neptune is asking each and every single one of us and the questions out to the greater, grander collective. How the hell did this happen? How is this a part of our reality? How, in the name of everything that is good and holy, are we going to fix this? And these are the questions that should have been asked for eons, but absolutely need to have the greatest illumination of light right now, because we are at a crossroads. The Great Awakening that started back in 2020, technically, is about shaking the foundation of the realm in which we've created. So when we talk about that, we're talking about politics, we're talking about the royal family, we're talking about the Vatican, we're talking about the health system, the banking system, all of these big, major structures, these major systems that literally are the matrix that keep us restricted from being free, from truly aligning to the love that we are supposed to be unified in this realm, that, you know, our earth took a very dark turn many, many moons ago. And now the Great Awakening is here to rattle our cages and shake us up, wake us up to all of the darkness that we have been a part of. Even if you weren't aware of it, your unconsciousness has been a part of it, creating the grander collective here. And now it's time for each and every single one of us not only to ask ourselves about our individual lives and how the hell this happened and how did we let this happen, but on the grander scale, we have to start asking the right questions. We have to speak our truth. There are many truths that are arising at this particular point in the year, in the decade. If you don't understand right now that the 20s are meant for basically restructuring, we are breaking things down at the beginning of the 20s so that we can rebuild them throughout the 20s and have a different reality to jump into in 2030. So I know I got off to a little bit of a rant there, and I try my best not to rant because, again, when I start ranting, a lot of my own personal views and personal passions and all that kind of stuff get into the mix, which I try to keep very divided. But nonetheless, it needs to be brought to our attention. There is some horrible injustices going on against humanity right now, and we all have to play a part in not only asking the right questions, but in speaking our truth and making sure that the light does not dim on these very important topics. So the moon goes ahead and makes an aspect with Mars and with Neptune. And if that rant doesn't tell you how fired up you can easily get, then this aspect with Mars and Neptune will. Mars is in Leo. He is the god of war. He is very fired up, very passionate. He wants to take action. He wants to correct all of the wrongdoings in the world. He wants to follow his heart. He wants to be passionate because he's in Leo, the heart and soul of the zodiac. He wants to express himself through taking action to make sure that we can illuminate this darkness taking place on the greater global, stage here, and that we do something about it so that it never happens again. History tends to repeat itself, but at this particular point, humanity has the opportunity to learn such great lessons from history that we have the power to alter the course so that certain situations do not repeat themselves moving forward. So the moon goes ahead and aligns with the true node. Again, every single time we get fired up, every single time we get a little bit down, every single time we lose our way, we have to be reminded by that vision for the future that we're working so hard to align with. So just to give you a little bit of a tidbit, if you are finding yourself a little bit revved up like myself, a little bit passionate, a little bit full of, just downright hatred for some of the things that are taking place on the earth right now, what we have to understand is we can't sit in that lower vibration of hatred, of fear, of anger, of irritability, although it is very warranted and an absolute perfect response to some of the horrific things that are being illuminated to us. What we have to understand is feeding into those lower vibrational energies is actually feeding the wrong dark forces, right? We have to understand that this is an energy exchange. We each have a white and black wolf within us, a light and dark force within us. And there is a governing light and dark force governing over humanity, over the earth. Which God are you feeding? Because they are both powerful in their own right. And so the moon conjuncting the true node is going to give us a snapshot of the future that we want to be living in, that we want to be creating, that we would be happy to experience in order to remind us that we can't sit in the lower vibration. We can't be angry. We can't be fearful. We can't sit in hatred. We have to turn the darkness into light. We have to turn the pain into power. And we get that opportunity when the moon makes an aspect with Pluto. So Pluto is the god of the underworld. He does rule over the dark parts of us. And may I remind you, people don't want to accept this fact, but the negative energies are just as powerful as the positive energies. And that's why we have to be so mindful about who and what we're pouring into. And so there's a lot of power that comes out of pain and hatred and anger and frustration. There's a lot of power there. But because we are alchemists, because we hold such power within us, we have the ability to recognize, I'm going to take this very powerful emotion, this very powerful energy, and I'm going to pour it into something good. I'm going to turn this darkness into light. I'm going to turn this pain into power. I am going to recognize that instead of feeling helpless, because a lot of these situations are illuminating where it is that we did not have control, where it is that there was a bigger governing force ruling over these situations than what we had control over, instead of feeling like we are a victim, now we can empower ourselves to take action, to make a move, to start feeding into something in a higher vibration that we can take our power back. And just as we do that, the moon sextiles Venus. And this is where we open our heart chakra. This is where the moon in Gemini, of course, is going to illuminate for us both sides of the coin, the darkness and the light, the hatred and the love, the pain and the power. We see it. We see both sides. They're very extreme. How are we ever going to find a happy medium? We find it in our heart chakra. We find it in our heart space. And that's what Venus wants us to recognize. Because Venus is in Leo right now, illuminating for us where it is that we need to make a change, where it is that we need to go after what it is that we want, where it is that we have to really fight to really align with what makes our heart happy. And coming out of all of that very intense realization of the darkness, of the pain, of the suffering, of the fear, of the hatred, we have to illuminate the good vibrations. We have to align with the kinds of changes that we have to make in order to create distance between the darkness and the fear and the hate, moving into the light and the love and the unity. The moon goes ahead and trines with Saturn, Saturn being retrograde in Aquarius, very focused on the social responsibility that we have, the greater, grander collective, humanity as a whole. The moon, of course, in Gemini being very split down the middle, of course, seeing both sides of the coin. Trining is blending the energy with Saturn. And of course, Saturn is the military father, grandfather, if you will, the Lord of Karma, recognizing now that, wow, we have to do something. We have to speak our truth. We have to ask the right questions. We have to express ourselves to the absolute fullest. We have to speak up for those that have been speaking and have not been heard. We have a social obligation, a social responsibility to be the leaders of those who have been silenced. This is going to be a big deal. This is going to be a big shift. And just as that shift happens, Venus opposes Saturn. So Venus, of course, in Leo, very connected on the me, on the I, on the what I want, what I need, what I desire, my talents, my skills, where I need stability, where I need abundance, where I need to plan for the future, sitting across from Saturn, retrograde in Aquarius, talking about what the world needs, what the collective needs, what humanity needs. And suddenly we're illuminated to how we can start contributing a little bit more, how it is that we can use our own voice, our own heart space, our own wants, our own needs, our own desires, our own skills and talents, how we can use our individual selves as a tool to help the greater, grander collective. This isn't going to feel good. None of this sounds good, doesn't feel good. Is it meant to feel good? Absolutely not. Do we make changes when we feel good? No, we don't. We only make changes when we're tired of the pain and tired of the suffering. And in that moment, the moon in Gemini sextiles with Chiron, the wounded healer. Suddenly we realize, wow, we do hold a lot more power than we think. We can have a greater influence than we could ever have. I can have what I want, what I need, and what I desire, and still help others. I can still put myself first, and I can still contribute to the greater, grander collective. And now it's time, because the moon in Gemini sees both sides of the coin and sees where it is that our wounds are still very large, very open, very exposed, where it is that we can make small efforts, small actions in our daily lives, in the way that we think, in the way that we feel, in the way that we operate and take action in order to contribute to the better outcome of all of us as a humanity and as a collective.